For some reason, my program just stops recording. So continue on. We just covered doing a search for a particular coffee. On page 337, it goes on to say that Julie's very happy with everything, but she wants to be able to delete a coffee that she no longer has. So let's let me bring up the program. Okay, so I've opened up Modify Coffee Records, and so let's look here and notice that we have import OS, and we have comments as that is needed for the remove and rename of functions. So there's going to be some code that is already written for us that we're going to utilize. It looks as though all we have is the main function, and it's called at line 68. So we come in, and first thing we do is we've got found equals false. So we've got a Boolean variable. We've got search, so we're going to do a search again, and we get the input from the user. We're going to new quantity is basically enter the new quantity. So here's what we want to do. In this particular case, we need to be able to take existing coffee and update the quantity, whether we have more or less on hand. So that's what we want to do there. So we've got coffee file, so we got a coffee file object, and we're going to open the coffee.txt file for read. We're also going to create another file. We're going to open up another file called temp file, and we're going to open that up as temp.txt for write. So we have two files open, one's read, one's write. So first thing we do is we've got to read the file from the coffee file. So we say read line, we throw in a description. While description's not equal null, meaning there's data there, we're going to go into the loop. Quantity is going to be the next line read. We're going to convert it to a float and put it into QTY. We're going to then do an R strip. We're going to strip off the /n at the end of the description. So now we've got our two records. We've got the description and we've got the quantity. Then we're going to say if this is almost identical to the search, except there's slight differences. So we're going to say if descriptions equal search, then we're going to say temp file write the description and temp file write the new quantity. Okay? And where did we get that? We got that up here. We're going to basically search for a specific coffee, and we're going to have a new quantity. And we're going to write that to the file. So it's going to have the description and the quantity. We're going to put found equals true. Else, if it doesn't match, we're going to go ahead and write the description and the existing quantity to the temp file. So it's going to do that for every record. It's going to read a record and write to the temp file. If the quantity, if that particular coffee is found, it's going to write the new quantity for that quantity. So basically, when we get done, the two files will be identical, except one of the coffees will have an updated quantity. Okay. At the end of that loop, we're going to close the coffee file. We're going to close the temp file. Now, this is where the OS comes into play. We're going to say os.remove coffee.txt file. It actually deletes that file. Then we're going to say os rename temp.txt to coffee.txt. So we delete the coffee text file because the temp file is really the new updated coffee file. So we delete the coffee file, then we rename the temp file to the coffee file. So now that what's there is the updated file. If found, we will say the file has been updated, else the item was not found in the file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically go and open the file and get, I want to get the exact name. I'm going to copy it. So I'm going to update this Sumatra dark roast. So I'm going to copy this. Do a Control-C. Then I'm going to run this program. and it will come up and say, enter description to search for. So that's where I'm going to paste that in. The existing corner right now is 15. Let's say I got 10 more items to add, so I'm going to make it 25. So it's going to go through and it says the file has been updated. So now when I open up coffee.txt, now here's what's wild, is when I go to my particular folder that holds all those items, coffee.txt is now at the bottom of the list because it was newly created. And whenever you create a new file in Windows, it adds it to the bottom. So when I open it, it now shows Sumatra 25, Brazilian dark roast, and here's that Sumatra dark roast is now 25. So that's pretty cool. So that's how we can update a file. Now let's take that a step further. And now Julie wants us to be able to delete a record. So we're going to open up the delete coffee record. Oh, come on, you should have opened right up. And delete coffee record. So this one's going to be pretty much identical to the last one, the last file, the modify, and except here when it says the description is not equal search. So what we're searching for, if they don't equal, we're going to write that record to the new temp file. Okay. Notice that if it does equal, all we do is we say found. So what we're doing is we're taking a record, we're writing it from the one file to the next, one file to the next. Until we hit one we don't, we do not write that file, but we go to the next record and write it. So that one gets skipped over. So in the new file, it's now been removed, and that's how we delete a record. So that's the only difference between this program and the last program. We close both files, we do a remove of the coffee, we do a rename of the text, and then we say if found, the file has been updated, else that item was not found in the file. So let's go ahead and run it. And I'm doing paste of the Sumatra dark roast, hit the enter key, and it's going to say that file has been updated. And again, if I open up coffee, we'll see that third item has been deleted. So, pretty cool. It seems kind of strange how we do it. We write to one file and then delete that file and then rename it as the old, but that works just fine. That works just fine. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the chapter on writing to and reading from files. This last part of the chapter is what's called exceptions. We need to be able to find a way before red text shows up at the bottom showing errors. We want to capture that error and display a message to the user on how to continue or what the problem was. So I'm going to open up division, and again, this is kind of a refresher of what we had before. So I open up division, and here I'm going to get a number 1 and 2 from the user, and we're going to divide those numbers. So when I do this, I'm going to enter 20, and then I'm going to enter a 0 and hit the enter key, and look at that, we get that red text, and it basically comes back with 0 division error, division by 0. Okay, now this is the last thing we want our user to see. Our users need to see good descriptive messages and not all this text, because they see this, they don't know what to do. So let's open up division 2. Now let's see what they do. So this is how we did it before. This is how we handled it ourselves. We've got if num2 is not equal 0, then we're going to do the division and we're going to print what the product is. Else we're going to print cannot divide by 0. Now we've already seen what happens there, but there's an even better way to catch this. So, well, let's cover one more error. So this is division by 0. So if the second number is 0, it will cause an error. Let's open up gross pay 1. Now remember what I talked about in one of the previous lectures. I said, some of the stupidest people in the face of the earth are users. We expect them to type in one thing, they type in another. Well, here's going to be an example. So let's say we run, this is, we're going to ask how many hours you worked and what's your hourly rate. We're going to multiply those together, get the gross pay, and we're going to display the gross pay. So we run this, and it says, how many hours did you work? And this person writes in FORTY, 40. That's text. Hit the enter key, look what happens. It blows up and says value error. Invalid literal for int with base 10, 40. Wow, that's real descriptive. The user's really going to know what happened to that, don't they? They have no idea. This is all gobbledygook to them. They don't know what that means. So how do we basically catch these errors? Let's open up gross pay 2. And we'll talk about it. So gross pay 2, we have a new thing called a try. It's basically try except. Try says, go ahead and try this. And accept says, if there's an error, come to me and I'm going to handle it. Okay? So try says, try all these things. And so when I type in 40, now notice down here, this text right here is a value error. That's because it was text trying to be put into an int. This says if we get an exception of a value error, we're going to basically print error hours worked and hourly rate must be valid integers. Okay, so let's run it and try that again. So it comes up and says how many hours did you work? I'm going to type in FORTY, and now it says error hours worked and hourly pay rate must be valid integers. Okay, so now we've got a little better explanation to our user that, hey, might even say must be valid integers / numbers, because your user might not know what an integer is. So now if we run it and we type, okay, they expect me to type in a number here. So I type in 40 and 20, and now we basically have $800. So yeah, that worked just fine. So again, a try except statement. Try says try this. The except says if you get this error, I'm going to handle it and basically cover it from there. So as soon as we tried this on line 6, as soon as it tried to put text into a hours, right? Well, as soon as it tried to convert it to an int, it blew up, and that's when this except basically got called. Nothing else. Lines 7 through 15 were not even looked at. Okay, let's do file display 2, or display file 2, sorry. Display file 2. And here we've got a try and an accept. And here we say enter a file name, and then we're going to basically create an end file object and open whatever file name we typed in for read. And then we're going to basically go ahead and just do a read of everything in that file and throw it into contents. And then we're going to print the contents, close the file, except if there's an IO error. It says an error occurred trying to read the file, and we're going to display the file name. So let's run it. And I'm just going to type stuff.txt. And that says, oh, sorry, an error occurred trying to read the file stuff.txt. So at least now there's somewhat, I mean, we can get more detailed in our explanation. we could say maybe, we could say there was an error trying to read that. Maybe the file doesn't exist, or maybe it was misspelled. We could get very descriptive in that particular error message. But at least they're not getting that red text with all that stack trace and all that other stuff, because they have no idea what that means. This is a little more descriptive, and it's an error, but at least it's displaying something they can understand. Now, can we handle more than one exception? We most certainly can. Let's open up Sales Report 1. So here I have a try. It's got the input file and for line, and so it's going to do all that. And it says, except if we have an IO error, it's going to display an error occurred trying to read the file. If we have a value error, meaning non-numeric data was found in the file. And then we have another one, it's just an except. Wow. Think of that as the catch-all. That if it's not an IO error, if it's not a value error, then it's basically we don't know what it is. We're just going to say an error occurred. We don't know what it was, but an error occurred at some point. So if we run this, and it ran just fine. But what if I did this? What if I had data 2 right here, sales data 2, and I run it? An error occurred trying to read the file. Now, what if I go into sales data 2? Oh, sales data, I'm sorry, sales data. I'm going to change this 45 to a 4A, okay? I'm going to do a save, and I'm going to close all these files out. And now let's run it. Now we get non-numeric data found in the file. So now, again, we now have something that the user understands and can go from there. So let me reopen that up and change that back. But again, if some other error happened, that will be caught with the last exception. That's the catch-all exception. Okay. Now let's open up Sales Report 2. And there we've got our try statement, and everything inside there's the same. And then we've got an except, and that was already okay. So we already talked about this. So this is the catch-all. This catches everything. It doesn't matter what happens, but it basically catches all. Now again, it's not a very good error message, but at least it's not gobbledygook that the user doesn't understand. Okay, so the user could say, "Oh, hey, this is wrong here." So how do we fix this? Well, let's open up gross pay number 3. Gross pay 3. And there I've got a try. And there I've got, now, we've added one more thing to the exception statement. We've got value error as ERR. So I'm just saying value error, we're saying ERR. And then all down here I'm saying print ERR. What's that all about? Well, guess what? Python can capture the error. It knows it's a value error because we've got text going into a numeric. Let's see what, and then it will actually get the proper error message and display it. So let's see what that's all about. So when we run it, I'm going to type in 40. It says invalid literal for int with the base 10 40. Now that's it's very detailed for a programmer and someone who deals with Python, but it's not really explanatory for a average user. but it does give a lot of detail there. It's saying you've got an invalid literal for the int within the base 10. It looks like somebody tried to type in text for an int. Okay, so that's basically what that's saying. But notice how it gives more error than just invalid error happened. So let's open up sales report 3. And here again, we got our try. We got all the stuff that goes with the try. And then we have exception as error. So this is kind of a catch-all for everything. So that's kind of nice. So this would probably be the one instead of having just that except statement by itself to catch everything, I would do exception. This guy is the catch-all for all errors, and then we can actually get the ERR message down here. So I'm going to change this to 2, sales data 2. Let's run it and see what happens. And it says, no such file or directory, sales data 2.txt. It did have this error number 2 in there, but it gave a pretty descriptive error message there. Now, what if I change, I'm going to open up sales data, I'm going to change that back to an A. So I'm going to have that to change that to 4A again. And let me save it. And now let's run it again. And now it says could not convert string to float. 32589.4A, and then it's got the next line in there. So now it's telling us, hey, this is not numeric data. So that's a lot more explanatory as well. So again, let me change that back. So now we know to go into our sales data and go, hey, there's an A in there. There shouldn't be. Oh, there it is. There's the A. So we take that and change it back to a numeric. And now this should run just fine. And boom, sure enough, there it is. It gives a total of all those numbers. So exception as error. Now, if we want to be very precise on the error message that we display, we can basically grab some of those error message that come into play. Now, let's open up sales report 4. And this guy has one more thing. It's got try, everything that we've seen inside of that, and then it's got exception as error, print error, and then it says else. So what the else statement says, it's executed after everything in the try. So once it tries all this, if there are no errors, if there's no exceptions, it's going to go into the else and do a print of the total. So that's kind of nice as well. So there's no need to try, you know, if any one of these things here can cause an error, and if it gets past all that, we can just go into the else. So it says, try this. If there is an exception, go here, else, print this. So we go ahead and run it. And there's that total again. But again, if I were to type in a 2 right there and run it, it comes up and says, no such file or directory, sales_data2.txt. So the else statement, kind of nice. Now, could I just put this right below line 19? I could. It would work just fine. But it's saying that there's no need to go ahead and do any of that because this doesn't cause an error, but these can. So put this outside of that, so there's no need to even look at that because we could actually put the file close in there as well. So that could actually go in the else statement. No, we do, no, I'll take that back. We want to keep it there because we definitely want to close the file. Okay. Now, there's no example of this, but we do have one more, and that is called, now again, this is what we could do here. I'm going to take this close statement and I'm going to type in the word finally, colon. And there's where I'm going to close the file. Now here's the thing. Oh, I've got an error here. What's that? Okay. So what a finally says is, a finally is going to be executed no matter what. The try says this, if there's an error it does this, and the finally says, I don't care if there's an error or not, I'm going to execute. So in this particular case, this file was opened right here, or was tried to. If we get an error or we don't get an error, the finally clause will basically be executed and it will close that file. So when I run it, it runs just fine and the file got closed. So the finally statement is probably a good place to put your close statements if you're using a try-catch. You should always probably use a try-catch statement when you're opening and closing files, just for the fact that it might not exist. It might be corrupted somehow, might be misspelled, but it's always good practice to make sure we put a try-catch or try-except statement. Try-catches for Java, by the way. A try-except statement around anytime we're doing any kind of a file routine. Okay, so that's it for chapter 6. Again, if you have any questions, you can ping me, we can Zoom, you can share your screen. I'd be more than happy to help. Just ping me to set that up. If you have any, and make sure you look at the homework, get that done, and we will see you next week for chapter 7.